Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Shalom. This is Day by Day Reflections and Thoughts to Yashar'al, Nation of Believers. Day by Day Reflections and Thoughts to Yashar'al, Nation of Believers. My name is Symmanayah, and I'd like to welcome you to this recording. If you're tuning in for the first time, you will come to know that Yashar'al, Nation of Believers, of whom I reference, consists of all nations who seek to worship and obey Almighty Yahuwah. Those who come to accept Yahusha as Mashiach, as our Messiah. Those who understand that we are made one by Yahusha, our Mashiach. With that said, again, my name is Symmanayah. Today is October 9th, 2013. And in this segment, I want to address Two Faces of Leaven. Yes, Two Faces of Leaven. Puffed up or strengthened? Who is able to discern righteous leaven? Again, welcome my brothers and sisters. Many of us, when we hear or read about leaven, fail to realize there is good leaven as well as bad leaven. When we read in scriptures about unleavened bread, it is merely instructions to be aware of spiritual influence, and through the practice of eating bread that has no leaven or unleavened bread, we are reminded of what is expected of us. You see, my brothers and sisters, all too often we fail to be patient and discern the life in the scriptures, the life in the instructions. If the flesh lusts or war against the spirit, then our priorities first and foremost is to discern what is prescribed for our spirit. In other words, if we are able to see the purpose of our practices regarding the use of unleavened bread is mainly to bring our attention to being obedient and come away from bad influence. The eating of physical bread is secondary. All too often we fail to realize what is the priorities in this journey. When we examine scriptures throughout, we find the text or the letter, and we discover they can be made alive. Many of us have witnessed the natural in the spiritual in reading the scriptures. Remember, Matthew 24:7 reads as follows: For nation shall rise against nation and reign against reign, and there shall be scarcities of food. This is literally talking about famine, my brothers and sisters, and deadly disease and earthquakes in places, such as Matthew 24:7 just mentioned. Amos 8:11, however, states, See, days are coming, declares Master Yahuwah, that I shall send a hunger in the land, not a hunger of bread, nor a thirst of water, but for hearing the words of Yahuwah. And so we see here is talking about the spiritual side, my brothers. In examining these scriptures, one can discover that there are natural and spiritual representations presented in scriptures. One is forever, such as our spirit will live forever, whether we be with the Mashiach or unto damnation, the spirit will continue to exist. The other is finite, the earthen vessel, the flesh. It will go back to the dust from which it came. Also remember, we are told that our bodies are earthen vessels with treasures inside. Let's examine definitions and synonyms regarding leaven. Getting back to the subject of the two faces or two faces of leaven. As a noun, leaven means a substance, typically yeast, that is added to dough to make it ferment and rise. Another definition of leaven as a noun is a pervasive influence that modifies something or transform it for the better. That could also be said a pervasive influence that modifies something or transform it for the worse. As a verb, it calls dough or bread to ferment and rise by adding leaven. Synonyms: raise, make rise, puff up, expand, more. Another definition as a verb, leaven means to permeate and modify or transform something. Synonyms: permeate, infuse, pervade, imbue, suffuse, transform, and more. I pray that I've set the stage for what I'm about to say. I encourage you to listen carefully to these words with a prayerful mind and heart, with earnest intentions to worship and obey the Almighty Father Yahuwah, with a desire to discern and understand the set-apart spirit of Yahusha, what he reveals. You see, my brothers and sisters, I believe with all my heart, I am compelled without a doubt to believe that if our intentions aren't to worship and obey the Most High Father Yahuwah, first and foremost, with a ready mind, with ready ears, with ready eyes, then we will struggle in hearing his voice. We will struggle in understanding what is meant in the written text, what is meant in the letter. We will find ourselves with veils over our eyes and our ears clogged, unless our intentions are to worship and obey, not to impress someone, not to prove to somebody one thing or another, not to use it for hidden agendas or to manipulate it or for selfish reasons. But if our intent is to worship and obey him, then we will find life most immeasurable. Discernment and understanding is paramount. Very important. And unless we establish that mind to worship and obey, the struggle will occur. So many of us fail to realize, fail to understand. 1 Corinthians 5:6 reads as follows: Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Thus an example of puffed up. Galatians 5:9, a little leaven leavens all the lump. Again, example of being puffed up. There are some individuals who do not acknowledge the writings of Shaul or Paul as scriptures. Many have failed to hear what the set-apart spirit of Yahusha makes alive. Many of these individuals are stuck on form, the letter. In other words, because it says Shaul's letters, debating or arguing over whether we should or should not accept them as inspired letters guided by the spirit of Yahusha, as compared to books, as the portions of scriptures, as other portions of scriptures are labeled. Do not get stuck up on form, my brothers and sisters. I submit to you, let us begin to listen to the voice of the spirit of Yahusha and come to identify the seed of words and messages. In other words, whether one chooses to use the form book or letter, both are texts, both are written pieces of information, both require being made alive by the Spirit, the set-apart Spirit of the Almighty Father, Yahuwah, sent in Yahusha's name. Don't forget, Yahusha means Yah salvation, Yahuwah salvation, Yah saves, or Yahuwah save. Whichever one of these forms you elect depend on whose translation you embrace. The seed of the matter, though, the bottom line of these examples of form, is that they all identify the same function, that we are spared from death, or depending on your choice of form or words, we are made alive by him, the most righteous. Again, examples of form and function. I pray that you are still with me. If not, please don't hesitate to rewind and listen to it again so that you not misinterpret what was said. It is better to be precise in listening and speaking versus assuming a false witness due to misinterpretations and misguided influence. My brothers and sisters, it is so important that we begin to grow to realize there is a battle, wars within our earthen vessels. It will be wise to realize the life that was breathed into our bodies by the word of Almighty Yahuwah demonstrate that these earthen vessels have a spirit within them. Many miss this is one of the reasons breath is used to describe ruach, which means spirit. Each of us are made up of a spirit encased in an earthen vessel. Earthen vessel describing from the dust of the earth. Example, Genesis 2:7. And Yahuwah Elohim formed man out of the dust from the ground and breathed into his nostril breath of life, and the man became a living being. I mentioned in previous recordings how Shaul or Paul provided excellent example of the battles or wars within us in Romans 7th chapter. I invite you to read it several times over and discover the life in these scriptures. Moving right along, let's consider leaven and unleavened from a natural perspective. But before I continue, let me share some verses. Exodus 13:7. 13:7 says, this is Exodus 13:7, and it reads as follows: Unleavened bread is to be eaten the 7 days, and whatever is leavened is not to be eaten with you, and leaven is not to be seen with you within all your border. That's Exodus 13:7. Matthew 13:33. Matthew 13:33 reads as follows: Another parable he spoke to them. This is the Mashiach talking. The reign of heavens is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened. In these excerpts from scriptures, we see two different functions of leaven, or depending on your perspective, one of leaven and one of unleavened. You see, my brothers and sisters, one could interpret the instructions of unleavened bread, example in Exodus 13:7, as to lean towards righteous influence and be obedient. This means if we follow what is presented, what is ordered, we are following righteous leaven, which in this case happens to be bread without yeast, unleavened bread. I invite you to rewind and listen again, and I'll repeat it one more time. If we follow what is presented, what is ordered, we follow righteous leaven, righteous influence, thus, which in the case happens to mean we do not eat bread that is leavened. We eat unleavened bread. Sounds a little confusing. Play it again if you need to. I invite you to rewind and listen again and again if necessary before continuing to prevent misinterpretation of what I just said. Let me add another perspective to it. Again, with adjustment of perception, Matthew 13:33 could be saying by identifying righteous influence, it's like identifying the sovereignty which indeed requires coming away from unrighteous influence, thus embracing unleavened behaviors that are not like the reign of the Most High Father. Again, rewind and replay if necessary. What I just stated in effect is in an effort to prevent misinterpretations of my words. That's why I say sometimes rewind, because all too often it is easy to misinterpret what one says, whether it be in writing, recording, or just listening to them. We are busy. We are in battle. The flesh, will, lust, and war against the spirit. Our ears sometimes can be deceiving. Please be prayerful minded and listen with precision, lest you or I find ourselves in a position described as false witnesses. All too often we can witness misinterpreting one another's words, especially if we are texting or writing. It is hard to discern the emotion in or spirit behind one's communication through writings alone. It is the Spirit of Yahusha that will give us discernment. It is the Spirit of Yahusha that will lead and guide us to maybe ask questions, to seek out clarity, so that we understand what a person is communicating. Sometimes mistakes are made because we may read something too quickly or without giving it to the individual, the undivided attention it deserves. Yes, I've been guilty of such, and it's through a repenting state of mind I acknowledge the atoning power of the Spirit of Yahusha and press forward. I ask you, brothers and sisters, are we supposed to be guarding our vessels, these earthen vessels, so that our actions won't be perceived or won't be reflective of wickedness? I submit to you that if we fail to seek to pray without ceasing, if we fail to communicate continually with the Most High Father Yahuwah through a set-apart spirit sent in Yahusha's name, we become at risk of unrighteous influence, wicked leaven, seeping into actions, our actions or the actions of one another, or seeping into those who see and repeat or mimic what they see us doing. If we are not walking in obedience, then we contribute to unrighteous leaven. We contribute to people being puffed up with the wrong influences. How many of us have ever watched or witnessed raw dough rise? How many of us have ever watched something baked from a raw state into a finished product? Did the finished product resemble something that became inflated or puffed up? Did you witness a rise from the original condition? I submit to you a cliche as well. How many have heard that one bad apple can spoil the whole barrel? Keep these examples in mind and consider the scriptures, my brothers. Matthew 12:25, and Yahusha knew their thoughts and said to them, every reign divided against itself is laid waste, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Mark says, and if a house is divided against itself, that house is unable to stand. My brothers and sisters, it's important that we understand the two faces of leaven. In these last days, in these end times, as Yashar'al is refined and perfected, there will be a demonstration of Yashar'al gathered together. It will require individuals listening to the guidance of the Spirit of Yahusha. It will require leaders and elders who have the discipline and strength to execute right rulings such that we do not find ourselves divided against one another. It would require leaders or brothers who may come across as being arrogant or strong. Do not confuse strength as a tree planted by the rivers of water with arrogance. Do not confuse someone as being cold-hearted because they are disciplined in executing right rulings. Yes, the enemy have excuses and distractions to perpetrate destruction, to precipitate division amongst believers. So in the coming days, we will watch iron sharpening iron. We will witness the discipline among those who has the strength to obey and listen continually to the Most High Father through His set-apart Spirit sent in Yahusha's name. If we take under consideration these scriptures about a house divided against itself, if our words and actions cannot be described as righteous, then we contribute to being puffed up, or we are at risk of puffing up one another. I am compelled to believe this occurs often among brothers and sisters when we fail to be aware of righteous guidance and instructions, or we neglect to execute right rulings one towards another. I am compelled to believe that when we patronize one another, in other words, when we say things just to make each other feel good. Yes, you're a strong moray. Yeah, you're a strong moray. Yeah, you're an outstanding brother. You're an outstanding brother. Yeah, you're a great sister. Yeah, you're a great sister or brother. You know, you've heard it where we patronize. Some might say, well, I'm encouraging. If it is righteous and true statement, then I have no conflict. I have no ought with you. But if you're saying it's just to make people feel good, to promote and perpetuate feel good and false sense of security and comfort, then this clearly depicts succumbing and giving in to unrighteous leaven. It contributes to one being puffed up. Now, when we sharpen one another as iron sharpening iron, or contributed to the building up of Yashar'al, Almighty Yahuwah's people, as guided by the set-apart Spirit sent in Yahusha's name, a different outcome is realized. The results. In this situation, we are strengthening one another in righteousness. Thus, a more strengthened body is produced. This is also a fulfilling of Scripture, which informs us that we will be perfected in the righteousness of the Most High Father Yahuwah. We are perfected in yielding to Him. Him and us working towards one another. All too often we miss that. It also participates in the fulfillment of many promises regarding our refinement in His righteousness. Yes, my brothers and sisters, I have in times past presented recordings on this subject, but remember, beacons will flash until their usefulness is not necessary. I also realize that some will only look back so far to examine previous recordings, just as one treats a newspaper, a news feed, or any piece of information. Thank you. Thank you from all my heart. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and from my mind. I truly thank you for your patience in listening to this message. I salute your decision to give ear and much prayer to these words. I pray that my words are reflective of an obedient servant and that Yahusha is lifted up. For in Yahusha being lifted up, it is he that will draw all men. And I submit to you, we lift him up by our worship and obedience. Let us go forward and be mindful of whether or not we are contributing to one being puffed up or strengthened. Let us be mindful in our fellowship. Our actions are either puffing someone up or strengthening them. It will be wise to come to realize, even in the simplest of things we do, they can be examined to either originate from the Most High Father or the enemy. Just because we have come to take the simplest of things for granted, does not mean their origins do not come with a price. Remember, people are watching us. They examine whether or not our words are equal to our actions. People will not always inform us of their surveillance of us. But I'm quite sure you have witnessed someone staring, or is stated by some, eyeballing you. Yes, we've seen people stare at us, eyeballing us. Whether it be for a brief moment or for a length of time, our actions are measured against our words. Take a moment and reflect on any conversations that you may have experienced recently and ask yourself, did it contribute in any way, shape, or form towards making you feel encouraged about life? It does not always have to be someone quoting scripture or verses to be part of the ways of righteousness. Remember, the enemy comes to seek, kill, and destroy. So instead, if you experience things that are encouraging to life, things that build you up and others up as it relates to drawing closer to the Almighty Father, then it could have only originated from above and through his set-apart spirit sent in Yahusha's name. I pray that we are able to increase in discernment and understand with precision and speed as given by the Spirit of Yahusha. I pray that we choose to be someone who strengthens one another in righteousness, opposed to causing one another to be puffed up. Let us come to understand the two faces of leaven before jumping the gun per se and wrongfully accusing one another because of misconceptions or misunderstanding. Let us give credit to the Spirit of Yahusha when he makes alive, uncovers, and provides righteous understandings. Yes, my brothers and sisters, my family, there are two faces of leaven. Come away from the wickedness and compromising behavior and embrace all that is righteous. We have been informed that the Most High Father Yahuwah has opened the mouth of a donkey to save a life as if necessary, when it was necessary. We also observe in Scripture where it says, if necessary, he will cause the stones to cry out. It would be wise to come to realize his set-apart spirit sent in Yahusha's name will also use us to work and speak towards one another, one towards another. And the Most High will prove those whom he has used, those whom he will use, those whom he are speaking through. All righteous words will be followed with confirmation. You see, my brothers and sisters, it is true about the seed and the seed receiving water and the increase. Knowing the sequence of instruction, living instructions and guidance will have its place and fulfill all that is necessary. Yes, my brothers and sisters, we are dwelling places of his set-apart spirit, and as one who are joined with his spirit, we have responsibility to yield to his living guidance and instructions. Choose wisely this day whom you will serve, whom you will hear. Be encouraged, brothers and sisters. Instructions, reproof, discipline, judgment, and wrath will have their place, and Yashar'al will be refined, perfected to all that has been promised. Until next time, my brothers, my sisters, my family, be encouraged until the end. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, come to know the two faces of leaven. Pray for discernment and understanding. Act as guided. know when to come away from that which is unrighteous, and when to fall into the bosom of righteousness increasingly as we grow. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, I pray that we're able to endure until the end. Shalom, shalom, shalom.